As you said, I've been a portrait photographer for about 40 years. It started as a hobby, basically, and then it just accelerated. I started taking classes, and then I slowly got into portrait photography. I'm from New York City originally, and I started working with two studios. One studio was a wedding studio. I've done about 1,200 weddings in my life, all kinds of religions, all kinds of situations. And then there was another studio I did proms and portraits and all that. And along the way, I picked up equipment. And I tell everybody just getting into photography, it's a very expensive hobby, very expensive hobby. You know, and it's probably more expensive now than it was 10, 20, 30 years ago. And basically, what I learned in school was about light. And what makes you a good photographer is light, whether you're shooting indoors or outdoors. When you're shooting outdoors, it's kind of a challenge, so sometimes you have shadows, you have the sun and everything. You have to learn how to read the light, basically. Well, that's what makes great pictures outdoors. When you're shooting indoors, you have more an advantage, basically, because if you have multiple lights, you can control the light, basically. One thing you have to do when you photograph indoors, you have to shoot it manually, basically. And the settings, basically, that you would set is if you have a light meter. And what a light meter does, it measures the light and f-stops. You set the light meter to, back then it was ISO, now it's, what is it called now?
It's ISO, was ASA.
It's still ISO?
It's ISO, was ASA at one time, right?
Yeah, so you set your speed at ISO, and then your shutter speed, and usually if you're shooting indoors, it's probably 160 or less, you know, anywhere between 60 and 160. And then when you fire off your lights, it will give you a reading. It will tell you, okay, this is f8. So you set your camera manually to f8. The speed that you set it in here, it could be like 125. I usually photograph f8 at 125. It works for me. And how do you set your lights so you get f8? Basically, you measure one light and you position it where it's probably f8. That's your main light. The second light, this is for shadows, basically, is one stop under. And you would set this where it's 5.6, and it gives you, I believe, a 3:2 or 3:1 ratio, basically. And it'll just fill in that shadow just a little bit. Because in the old days, when they used gunpowder and they put that light over there, that was just spreading light out. That's flat lighting. And if you go to these family portrait studios, what they have is a big soft light with a light, you know, with a machine like that. They put it over the camera and poof, it just spreads the light out. That's flat lighting, basically. But if you want to be, you know, more creative, then you use light ratios. And then I added a third light. In the old days, everything was like canvas. But nowadays, in the digital age, they make everything out of cloth. And finally, they do everything green screen, just like in the movies. And what you can do, if you take a portrait with a green screen, possibilities are endless. You could put thousands and thousands and thousands of backgrounds behind you. You know, I could take a picture of you and put you in outer space. I could put you on a beach. I could put you in the middle of the ocean or on a mountaintop. Because with the software out there, you just extract the person and then pop in the background. And that's what they do nowadays. That's what they do, basically. A lot of portrait studios, we use a green screen or a blue screen. The only drawback to a green screen is sometimes there's a little green in the hair, but I'm sure that the software is better now that they eliminated that. And then the blue screen is probably for people with darker complexions or dark clothing. When I used to photograph high school seniors, graduating seniors, we would use a blue screen because they wore black tuxedos. So it worked out, basically. Now, when it comes to posing, what a lot of people do, and if you're photographing family members or something like that, don't have them stand straight up. That's a mugshot. If you've seen a mugshot, I'm sure on the newspapers or anything, that's a mugshot. You turn them slightly. So when you're doing portraiture, the way to do it is to point one shoulder to the light. And if you're shooting at just a camera outdoors, just turn their body just a little bit, and then turn their face towards the camera, or sometimes just have their eyes going to the camera. But anytime you're facing forward, that's like a police shot. That's a mug shot, basically. And if you have two people, basically, have one turn this way, the other one turn this way. It works out. It works out. So. And one thing you can do, if you're photographing people, make sure whatever your light source is, whether it's the sun or flash, keep a distance between the background and your subject. Because what happens is the sunlight or the flashlight will cast this black shadow. I'm sure that's happened to a lot of people here. But if you minimize it by walking away, the shadow will go down. So in portraiture, that's why you have a backlight, to get rid of that shadow, you know, from the lights. What else? Any questions so far? Go ahead.
Whose green screen software would you use? We're just running through Photoshop.
The what?
Whose green screen software?
There's a lot out there. You can use Photoshop, but there's other ones that are better.
Okay.
But since I stopped doing portraits years ago after I retired, I haven't got into it. But I'm sure if you look on the internet, you would find one that you know, works perfect. You know, that helps you just drop in backgrounds. So.
Will you be talking about, I guess, lights as one biggest thing we all have with the lights, like say in here you have all these overhead lights. But if you would have a room which would only have windows in it, and you would have to use the window light to, in addition to your, like it says, your setup here, to how that will affect your photography?
What I would invest in is a flash, basically. What happens is if you use available light, these fluorescent lights give out a green tint.
Mm-hmm. So
you'll have a green cast. You might not notice it until you put it through software and say, wow, this color doesn't look right. What I would do is invest in a flash, and if you get a really good flash, you can bounce the light. You just pop it up and bounce the light. And not only that, will it eliminate shadows under the eyes, but it would give you a nice soft look. And then a lot of these flashes have a diffuser. You can use a diffuser, and then if you're really into using flash, you can get one of these, and they work just as well. I don't know if this one fits here, but they sell these, and then you just pop them up. Now, if you ever see the newspaper or the paparazzis, they always have this on, and they're just blasting away, but it gives a soft light. It's the equivalent of using one of these soft boxes, and that's what you want, is soft light. Now, in the old days, they used to use pan lights, and they use these, you know, we're all old enough to remember these giant 1,000 watt bulbs. And they used to put them in, and then you just sit there and they tell you not to move, hold your breath. And that's how photography was back in the 40s and 50s. And then in the 60s, you know, came the electronics, and they started inventing flashes, not as good as this, but something similar. And then back in the 70s and 80s, then they started coming out with these lights, you know, and that just changed photography completely. And nowadays, with the computer-driven cameras, you can get good images, basically. But I would suggest if you're gonna shoot indoors, even get a small flash and learn how to control it. A good one will give you ratios. Like a Canon, it's called ITT. And some of them will, if you put on manual, you can put a manual like full power, 1/32 of power, 1/16, 1/8, until you get the right niche. It goes by distance, but it will give you excellent color. What happens is when you shoot indoors with these fluorescent lights and available light, you'll get an image that's gonna look muddy. It's not, the colors are not gonna pop out. So, and that's why in the studio, when you use these lights are calibrated for sunlight. I believe it's like 52,000 degrees, basically. And you can set your cameras, instead of auto white, AWD, auto white balance, you can set it to 5200. And the same thing when you're outdoors, you can set your camera, if it's cloudy, set your camera to cloudy, overcast, everything. You got to read the manual on cameras. The first thing that people don't do, they get a camera and they don't read the manual. And the manual is kind of, like what, 500 pages long, and you're like, oh God, this doesn't make sense. But they do have books out there. If you go on Amazon, type in the model of your camera, they do have books that are, easy guides, and they will guide you through all the settings. And once you learn the settings, your photography will take off. Trust me. Because, especially when you're outdoors, there's all kinds of light. There are days that it's overcast, there's days where it's just so bright, and plus the temperature of the light. When you're outside in the morning, the light is blue. Your eyes adjust for it, but the camera doesn't. Then during noontime, it's more like regular light, and then towards the evening, everything starts turning orange, because like the rainbow, there's different vibrations that give you the spectrum of light. So, and then that's where a flash comes in handy sometimes outdoors. If you want to get rid of that tint, you just pop a flash a little bit. When I used to photograph like football teams and baseball teams, I would use a flash outdoor because they would be, kneeling down, and I would just put it like maybe 1/8 of a power like that, just to put a little light in their face, and then give it a little color to their uniform. Worked out good. Any questions so far?
Do you need the lights down a little bit, Luis?
The what?
Do you need the overhead lights down a little bit?
No, not really.
You good? Okay.
Unless they want it that way. So I talked about flash. Okay, not everybody owns a flash meter. So if you wanted to get the perfect exposure, does everybody know about histograms? Use your histogram. If you're not sure about the light, whether you're indoors or even using some kind of light, use a histogram and try to bring it closer to the middle. If the histogram is more to one end or more to the other end, either you're overexposed or you're underexposed. So use your histogram, and if you look at your histogram, majority of the times, you should get really good exposures, basically. Now, I know everybody can't afford to set up something like this. What they have out there, they do sell little lights like this on Amazon. So if you're a member of a club, let's say chorus or dancing or something like that, and they want you to take group shots because they heard you're in a photography club, so you must know everything. If you had a light like this and then just put it on a stand over your head, you could light up probably the entire room. If you have multiple lights like this, they have built-in slaves. Slave is like, basically, if one light goes off, they all go off. Yeah, because I have about 3 of them in here. So, and that'll be a smaller setup like that. Now, but even better to save money is to get one of these. And what you can do, basically, if you bought 2 or 3 of these, and you could buy them on eBay. You don't have to buy the latest one. If you buy them on eBay, you could probably find these for less than $100. And what they do, I know the Canon series, the really good ones, they communicate with each other. So you could put one on a camera, put another one on it with an adapter on a stand somewhere, and another one somewhere there, and they will all flash at the same time, basically. You've done that, John, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so you just get a book and learn how to do it and get a couple of flashes. But once you learn how to use flash indoors, it opens a lot of possibilities. And not only that, you'll have really beautiful, colorful pictures, basically, because basically you're emulating the sun outside. You know, when you get good sunshine, you get really colorful stuff if you're doing landscapes like that. Indoors is a different story. You know, you got to create your own life, basically. Okay. Another thing you can do outdoors is basically they have what they call reflectors, and they're circular and they pop up, and you need an assistant for this sometimes, and you can have white reflectors to reflect light, and sometimes in the studio they'll have a table and they'll put a white reflector underneath. The camera can't see it, and then it just bounces light up, so you get less shadow under the chin and under the eyes. And then they have silver ones, they have gold, and basically you just control the light. You can use the sunlight and then control the light on your subject, basically. So, just to let you know. And basically, I think that's it. So, then I mentioned pose and right, so. And then when you use your camera, rule of thumb, is when you photograph one person or 2 people, don't be afraid to move your camera vertical. You'll get good shots. Now, if you get 3 or more, turn it horizontal, basically. And like I said, away from the back wall. Now, in the old days when I did portrait photography, I used big cameras. They were like 6x7. The negative was huge because they had to retouch them, basically. And then I had 2 1/4 cameras, like Hasselblad and all that. And these are big negatives, not now everything is digital and chips. And so the cameras were bigger than this, but nowadays, with mirrorless, cameras have gone down in size, as you can see.
Yeah.
But the quality is still good. But you know, with technology, microchips and everything, you know, everything changes. So I think some people here have the Sony cameras. Yeah, I used to have one too. And when they were the first ones to come out with mirrorless. And the quality was excellent. It's just that I invested so much money in Canon that I didn't want to spend too much money in the Sony. So after I used it and Sony came out with a bunch of mirrorless cameras, then I just sold it, you know, and concentrated on Canon. Because with Canon, they have adapters. You can actually put some of these lenses on these mirrorless cameras. So, and the adapters are inexpensive, about $100 or less. And then, you know, you don't have to throw away all these lenses that you have, basically. And then they'll use the same flashes that you used on these monster cameras, basically. So how many people are photographers for a couple of years? Most of you, I assume? Okay. So, any problems you guys are having, or, you know, or suggestions that I might help you with?
Luis, I know that there's a lot of people here that still are now shooting with their phones a lot. Can you talk a little bit about just basic good sound picture composition when it comes to taking portraits, whether it be with a phone or, you know, a mirrorless camera?
I own an iPhone, and since I've been a photographer for 40-something years, and I'm just amazed by the quality of the iPhone, basically. My only drawback as the iPhone is I can't zoom in. And that's why you need a camera like that. But the portraits I've taken with the iPhone are excellent. In fact, when I entered a contest last year, it was called Bishop's Castle. I took it in Colorado, and the quality was so good. I entered it. The only thing, I couldn't get the top of that castle. You know, I think that's where I lost points. But it's excellent. When you're shooting people forget it. They have a built-in flash. You can use that flash on that phone, but you gotta go through the settings so it's not at full power, because you don't want them, you know, pale white, looking like a ghost. So you could set the settings on any flash or even on your phone, basically. But with iPhones, I don't know much about Androids, but I heard they take very good pictures. They do a good job. They do a good job, and they're getting better with time. You know, I noticed a lot of them have 3 or 4 lenses, so they can go very wide, and then some of them can even zoom, you know. But it's tough when you shoot in nature photography, especially trying to get that, you know, hawk in your backyard, you know, an animal or something like that. You want to zoom in, so. But it's getting there. It's getting there. But the quality is good, and it's like some of them are like 4 or 5 megapixels, which is good. You can make a good 8x10 out of that, basically. And then when you're shooting, I suggest that you always shoot a little wide, because what you get in your camera is not the same as when you make a 8x10. You know, a lot of people make that mistake. They zoom in, and then when they have to make an 8x10, something gets cut off. So always give it a little space, you know. And then once you put into post-production in Photoshop, and then you can size it to 8x10. So, and then always use ISO that I use. I go anywhere between 200 and 800. You know, don't be afraid to. The cameras nowadays are so good. In the old days, they were very grainy. I remember when I was using film, and I would photograph like maybe at nighttime at a football game, and all that was available was an 800 Kodak film, and then it was a little grainy, but it was doable. But now with cameras, I've done some night games with digital, and even at 3200, there's a little noise when it's in the dark area, but the quality is pretty good. So I would say with time, the microchips are getting better and better. Cameras are getting smaller and smaller, so, you know. So.
I was wondering, you know, all this amazing equipment that you've brought here, I was just wondering if you could explain what it is and how you use it.
Oh, okay. Basically, this is your main light. This is the powerful light. And I'm using it with a softbox. In the old days, they used to just use a pan, basically. But that with direct light, that's harsh light. That's the kind of light you saw with the movie stars. If you look at the old portraits, and they were nice, black and white portraits, they were using, you know, like incandescent bulbs and hard lighting. Nowadays, people tend to use a lot of softboxes. This is basically an umbrella put over light. But this is your main light. So if you're familiar with f-stops, this is your main light. This is where you're gonna set your camera at. And I put it at a point where it's f8. And then for shadows, this is your fill light. This is to fill in the shadows to give it a 3-dimensional look. If I put this, you could shoot one light over the camera, but that's like a mugshot. That's flat lighting. That just goes around your face and your shoulders. But if you use one light, as you can see, one light is coming on one side of my light, and then this will fill in the shadows. so it wouldn't be like super dark. And then this light in the back, most people don't use anymore, but back in the day when you had backgrounds like that, you know, they were canvas, they were painted. I'm sure when you took your kids for Sears and all that, they had those backgrounds. That's just to light up the back to eliminate the shadows. And a lot of times you could put gels on it. You could put a red gel, purple gel, give it a different effect, basically. And then, like I said, and then nowadays, in the old days, you would have to run a line from the camera to synchronize it. But with technology now, you have this little piece, and all it does is pops everything off. Technology, you know. And before there used to be a lot of wires, and you're connecting this and connecting that, and then this light, even though this is ancient, see this piece here? This is the one that's capturing the light there. So when I pop that one, it hits that and fires that, instead of running a line in there. Because there used to be you had to run cords like this before, all the way from the camera into one of these machines and one into that machine. So photography is a lot easier now, a lot easier. And with the introduction of microchips and computers, basically people who shoot like program or whatever, you know, it's a no-brainer. But if you want to be a good photographer, I suggest you learn the other settings. I shoot aperture priority or manual. Aperture priority works for me, and then manual is like when you're in a situation where the lighting, you know, or something that's difficult, you can override it. You know, because sometimes there's a shot like, wow, I'll never get this photograph again. You got to know what you do right away, because the camera can only do so much. It's a hit and miss. Like I would never photograph an entire wedding using program, you know, or the automatic modes. I usually photograph a wedding with a flash on manual, basically, and a lot of times maybe aperture priority. So.
You know, what I found is manual is, to me, best way to go indoor studio type photography, because if you're going to have about 20, 30 different people sitting on the stool there, if you get somebody who's very, very light complected or somebody who's very, very dark complected, if you're shooting manual, the camera stops making the decisions, everybody gets lit properly.
I haven't faced that.
Yeah, the only thing I have noticed is with extremely light complected people, I bring the lighting down a little bit. Extremely dark complected people, I got to boost it up just ever so slightly.
Well,
But again,
if I faced that, I would just fix it in my software.
yeah,
That's what's good about Photoshop and these other things.
Yeah.
You can isolate it, and you can dodge it, make it darker, or you can make it lighter. And I've done that before, basically. So you know, but what I would do is, people who are dark, you put them in the front. People who are lighter, put them in the back.
Yep.
Because more light would hit them than they would somebody with light complexion. And then when I used to photograph Afro-Americans, the biggest problem I had, because they have a dark complexion, I would get this shine right on their forehead. You know, and there's nothing I can do with it because, you know, they were dark skinned, so that was something they had to fix in, you know, retouching, basically. But, you know, people who are Caucasian, you don't have that problem because the light's absorbed, but the darker your skin, it just reflects.
So for some of you that have used,
Excuse me, this is important. My car's in the shop.
for some of you that have used Luminaire,
What you wear, indoors, outdoors?
Well, indoor or outdoor.
Okay.
My question is about how do you set up, I know you want to set up the person on angles, but let's say you have older people who start to sag in different places. Are there different methods that you have them
Yes.
place their heads?
What you do, basically, if you have people with triple chins. Have them lean forward. What you do is when you lean forward, you're stretching the muscles in your neck. See, if they're like this, but you stretch them, tell everybody, just move forward. And then if you have double rows, just put the taller people, but put them in aisles. This is what I call aisles. If you had a person here and a person there, there's a gap. Make sure you put them, because some people are shy, they'll hide behind somebody. So you put them in aisles, basically. So if you have a group of like 7 people, then basically I would put 3 people in the front and then the tall people in the back. You know, you just line them up, one person here, aisle, one person, aisle, like that. If you have a bigger group, then I would suggest that you get them to stand on something. And if there's nothing available, what I've done in the past, I've gotten up on a chair and then you shoot down. Put them in, and then you shoot down. I once had a group of 140 people, and I had 15 minutes to photograph them. This was when I did things for Time Warner. So I went to the hotel room and I set up a big light, you know, and then they came in and I set up the seats. Then I had people sitting on the floor, people sitting on the seats, people standing. And then I took 4 shots and then they were gone. They were having some kind of HR convention or something, Time Warner. And it was good because I made $1,200 with that, so it was great.
Anything to help them keep their eyes open?
There's nothing you can do. You can count. You can tell people, listen, if you're a blinker, after I count to 3, open your eyes. And that works half the time. Some people are just chronic blinkers. There's nothing you can do. But some people, you just have them close their eyes and say, on the count of 3, open your eyes. 1, 2, 3. And they open their eyes, you take the shot.
Yeah, another thing, make sure you have the red eye reduction on your camera turned off, because that pops out a multitude of flashes. People will close their eyes.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah, and your
That's why I
setup-
shoot manual.
Yeah, your setup there is one flash, whereas even your Canon strobe has got 2 flashes, and some people can beat that second flash to get their eyes closed. It's got the pre-flash,
Yeah.
and the camera goes, okay, now I know what to do. And some people can actually beat that second flash, so it's, you gotta look really close to see the 2
No, yeah,
flashes.
you do. I remember I used to photograph weddings. You know, I would have my camera with one eye looking in the camera and one eye looking on the side.
Yeah.
So when the flash went off, I would see if they blinked. Basically, that's what's great about the new cameras, the digital, because you can see the blinks right away. And rule of thumb, if you take pictures of people, don't just take 1. Take 4 or 5. Take 4 or 5. You know, even if you're photographing a bird, take 10. But one's going to come out good. Take as many as you can. You know.
Do any of you use a remote shutter? Because I know every holiday when I get my entire family together, and of course there's nobody there to shoot the pictures except for me, I'll set up the tripod, I'll get a position nice and wide so it can be cropped later, right? Because it's usually going to be blown to that size, and I'm there with a remote shutter. So I've got my arm around my daughter, let's say, and I'm firing away however many times. I'll say, okay, 1, 2, 3, boom, 1, 2, 3, boom, and just keep firing away. And I know I'm eventually going to get what I need in terms of the eyes being open, the flash firing away. Now, what you have, Luis, I guess you don't have the problem because you have a power pack of those flashes not consistently firing every time at the light that you have it set to. Once you go to a remote flash head, it's battery driven, right? And you're going to find that you're going to fire multiple times, and some of those flashes are not going to be consistent with what you shot the first time. They have to reboot back up, and when you're firing quick, it's just not going to have the same
There's
power.
a way around it, Gary. Basically, if you're going to shoot multiple shots, set your flash at manual. If your flash, good flash has a manual override,
Yes.
and then set it at a power ratio. You know, 1/8 of a power, and if it'll keep firing. if you put it on ITT, after 3 or 4 shots, it's drained.
Yeah.
It needs, the capacitor needs to take, but if you put it on manual, and you just put it at 1/16 power, 1/8 power, you can get fire and fire and fire until it turns on fire.
That's it. Thanks.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Just out of curiosity, when you were shooting film, what was your favored setup, camera lens, and what film?
Well, it depends what I was photographing. If I was photographing late day or evening, it was 400 ISO with 800, anywhere 400 film or 800 film, lens wide open. You know, if you have 2.8 lens like that. If you're just photographing, like I said, if we went on a trip or something like that, you know, like 200 film, 160. I I didn't shoot that many slides. It's beautiful, but you know, it's hard to make prints on it or anything like that. But I used to use 160 film.
What was your favorite studio
Or 100.
camera?
Huh?
What was your favorite studio camera?
What am I have so many.
Really?
I had no favorites. I was just happy when digital came around, because as you get older, your eyes get, you know, you can't focus. And before, when I got into the business, we had this big cameras that were called Nords, and you just had to, you know, focus, and the image was upside down. They had a little box that somebody had there, and you just focus until you saw their eyes were sharp. And then, but I have to say, probably like an Hasselblad or Bronica. Those are my favorites, you know, because they were sharp, the negative was big, and yeah, they're probably Bronica, SQA, the Hasselblad, and basically the Bronica SQ. They were square negatives, about this size. So they were easy to retouch, and you never had to turn your camera horizontal or vertical, because it was a square. And then when they went to make prints, they could make a print this way or print the other way. So they have to say a square camera, basically, you know. And at 35 millimeter, I used to, before I got to Canon, I would use Nikon, because that was fast. And then the color saturation was excellent. And the only reason I switched from Nikon to Canon is because when digital came out, Nikon blew it, in my opinion. Canon came out with the technology to autofocus instantly. It took Nikon a long time to catch up. I don't know if they ever caught up, basically. But Canon was, I used to shoot like soccer and lacrosse and all kinds of sports in my spare time, you know, to make extra money. And with the Canon, I used to shoot Canon 7D Mark II. That is a camera on steroids. Pop, 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 pop. I could shoot 10 inches, they all be in focus, you know. So that's why I switched to Canon. Their focusing is excellent, you know. But Nikon, the colors is much better.
Luis is a collector of historical cameras, and at his house, he's got these all displayed. He just said to me, maybe we'll have a session where we
We'll
can
have a
bring
session.
in some
I'll bring
of the old
2 or 3
cameras.
boxes, and we'll do the history of cameras.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a question. When you're photographing, let's say, a couple in your studio, and you're an F8, what are you focusing on?
Their eyes.
Okay, well, which eye? You can't focus on all 4, right?
Well, basically, the way cameras are now,
Yeah.
they
You get
look,
those little square
they
lines.
look, yeah.
Yeah, they do.
They look that way.
Yeah.
But basically, you know, either the tie,
Okay.
but usually the eyes. I always focus on their eyes,
Eyes, yeah.
you know, because you have a feature in these digital cameras, you can focus and hold the focus and then move the camera just a little bit, you know. And that's what's good about F8, because even if you're slightly off, the depth of field,
Good, yeah.
the depth of field will get them, you know. So.
Louis, I just want to confirm what you said about Nikon with focusing. My first digital was a Nikon about 25 years ago, a D100, and you're right.
Oh, yeah.
It was a good camera otherwise,
Yeah,
but you're trying to focus, I mean...
If you're shooting still life or something that didn't move, it was perfect, but if something moved.
But I just bought a Nikon Z5 mirrorless camera, and the autofocus is
Good, yeah.
So they have,
They caught up, yeah.
and it's still, that's a
Well,
great.
but they dropped the ball back then, because everybody used Nikon back in the day, and Canon was like secondary, but once digital came, you know, and that autofocus was top notch, and you would see all these professional photographers, you know, in the football fields, and you can always tell, because they always had those 600mm lenses, and they were white. That's the signature of a Canon, you know, telephoto lens. You know, the white. I have one or two of them. They're white, and you know, and they're excellent. They focus so fast. So, but the Nikon still, yeah, money, yeah. Like I said in the beginning, you know, photography is an expensive hobby. Everything that I brought in my life, I only brought because it would make me money. I never extravagantly, you know, spend money just to buy, just to say I have it. It's got to make money for me. It has to pay for itself. So, and there's a place called, I'm sure that you guys know it, KEH out in Atlanta, and they sell excellent stuff, and you save money that way. You know, you get something that's probably been out there for a year or so, and you'll save a lot of money.
What's the name of it?
Like this camera here.
What's the name of it again, Luis?
KEH. The initials KEH out of
KEH,
Atlanta.
right?
They're the largest distributor of used equipment.
Right.
Now this camera, when it first came out, it was like $3,500. So I waited 2 years, just like you wait for a used car. And then I bought it for $1,000. It's 50 megapixels, great portraits, super camera. But it's heavy, so it's kind of outdated because, you know, I showed you the mirrorless. But I still use it. If I was going to do a portrait or something like that, this is the camera I'm going to use because I know I'm going to get sharp, a lot of detail, a lot of pixels, you know, so I could retouch easily, basically. But if there's a model that you want and you're patient, wait a year or two, you'll find it used.
And that
You'll
model,
save thousands of dollars.
that model, Luis, that you're in your hand?
The 5DS. 5DS. Very good camera.
Is this an okay flash or is it a crappy flash?
No flash is crappy if you know how to use it properly. You know. So, no. Oh.
That'd be an exception.
Okay, I saw the name, that's why. It's an inexpensive one.
Yeah. So what would you recommend for this camera?
Get a Sony one.
Okay.
Because what the Sony, basically, everything's computerized. So that if you get a Sony flash, they'll communicate with the camera and give you a better exposure. These are basically manual, as you can see. Let me get my flash.
Okay, if you go to KEH, look up Sony flashes, you'll get them at a quarter of the price of new.
Will you?
KEH.
Oh, Ricky said?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, see, something like this just has one button just to trigger it. This is the Canon. As you can see, there's a bunch of little bumps there.
Yeah.
And that's communicating with the camera. You know, and it's made for Canon. You could use this on a Nikon or something like that, but it would just, you would have to shoot it manually. But if you shot it on a Canon, then it communicates and gives you the right exposure. So,
Is this
But-
an
but-
okay camera for portraits?
oh yeah, this is one of my first cameras. Yeah, I had the same camera. This is so sharp, this is so good. It's a little complicated, the menu. So go on Amazon and get a book, look for Sony A7A, and they have these books, they're about $20, and they'll guide you to each setting and how to take better pictures of it. Yeah, because if you read the manuals are boring, black and white, it's like going through a newspaper. But you get these books, they're colorful, they show you pictures, they show you shortcuts, you know. Every time I get a new camera, I just go to Amazon and get a book on it.
Some of the manuals,
And then,
they
like I
have,
said, go to KH and see if you can get a compatible flash to go with that.
Do you always trust used, pre-owned?
Only that KH.
Okay.
They guarantee their work. They're very good.
Oh.
I wouldn't sell anything to them till they lowball you, but I would buy from them. Yeah,
Yeah, their estimates are,
yeah.
negotiable once they receive the film.
Yeah, because they'll quote you something, and when they receive it in a package, then all of a sudden the price dropped down 30%. So they're ripping me off. I'm like, no. So,
some of the large manuals now, 500-page manuals you reference, some of it now you can actually drive through AI, and it will summarize those manuals down to the crib notes that you really need to read. So if you don't like to read a 500-page manual, run it through AI, it'll summarize it right down to what you really need.
but get those books. Those books are good. That's good. And then they had a couple of authors out there that I can't think of. But if you go on Amazon, people write books on these. You won't find one book. You'll find like maybe 5 or 10. You've seen them, John, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and they help you. They do help you. Just look at basically what Amazon does. They give you a glimpse of the first 3 or 4 pages. You can look through the index and just see what it has, and then you could, but it'll show you how to use with a flash, what settings to use outdoors, everything. And those books are excellent. I think it's called Bush or something. There's somebody Bush that makes, but there's a couple of authors out there
Yeah.
that create those books. But they help a lot. They help a lot.
You could also go out to YouTube a lot of times and put that camera body in, how to use whatever, and you'll see a video on it.
Yeah, and that way you can carry a book. You carry a case like that on vacation. You have the book with you, and you just pop it up, and then just look for that section, and it makes it easier. And then what I found with Sony, it's super sharp, but that menu, this camera could do so much because basically you have a computer.
Yeah.
So you just got to learn how to use the menu. That's why I said, always read the manual, because the cameras are not like they used to be back in the day. Everything was manual. It was just f-stops and shutter speeds, and that was it. And then now with computer chips and all that, it can do so much. And I think a lot of cameras do HDR now, right?
Right.
So you could do a lot. You could do a lot.